One of the biggest draws to us about Roman roads isn't just the fact that we want to learn about how people traverse the landscape and to see those routes on the ground, but it's also the fact that with the Roman roads, there's still so many unknowns. So certainly the appeal for us in covering a Roman road is indeed that we can maybe find something new, something that nobody has ever discovered before, and maybe sort of help contribute to the understanding of the Romans here in the UK. Now I've just reached the top of this artificial mound, John's Mound, and it was built in the 1920s to preserve the view over Oxford. And looking around me now, this time of year, well, not much of a view at the moment. So in that direction is Oxford, and in the winter you'd probably have a view, but today's journey is going to take us south-southwest towards Wantage and maybe beyond. My name is Paul, welcome to Roman Road route number 164, the Roman road that just stopped. Or did it? So let's get back to basics. If I asked you to name a handful of Roman roads, I'm sure you probably could. Watling Street, Fosse Way, the Port Way, Ermine Street. But considering at the peak of the Roman civilization in the UK, there were 10,000 miles of Roman roads, well, names aren't hugely helpful. So come the 1950s, Ivan McGarry, already a prominent Roman archaeologist, published this monumental piece of work. Not only did he detail as much as was known at the time of each and every route, but he also came up with a simple and easy to use road numbering system. Essentially it's like the road numbering system we use today. All the main routes are numbered, M1, M2, etc. So Margary's numbering system brings us nicely to where we are today and allows us to tell you why this specific route is indeed a Roman road mystery. So in this diagram, route M1 joins London to Shrewsbury. It passes through St Albans, where you will find branch number 16. Now M16 travels west towards Bicester. Now a sub-branch is found here heading north-south. It's called M160. So somewhere on the north end of Route 160 is where today's route starts, Route 164. Now when we find this starting point, we'll then head southwest down onto Wantage, and this is where current evidence suggests that the Roman road just stops. Now one thing that's super useful when researching a Roman road are the OS notes. Now the OS notes do refer to Ivan McGarry on a number of occasions, but they also refer to a lot of other sources, which is great. Now one way to obtain those is to join the Roman Road Research Association, which we do. This isn't a paid sponsorship of course, but it'll cost you around about £14-ish a year. It's very well worth it, I can assure you. So those notes suggest that this Roman road came north out of Wantage, went into Frilford, carried on north through Besselsley, up almost in a straightish line north-northeast towards Alchester, or what is now Bicester. And that makes perfect sense. The A34 would probably follow that alignment and therefore there'd be nothing left. But it does suggest to back that route up, that here in the churchyard to Besselsley, they found some of the Roman road. That's perfect. And if we look just to the northeast of this churchyard, well, there's nothing in the churchyard, but just outside the boundary ahead of me is what looks like an agger. What do you think? Could that be part of the route I'm looking at just there? Best example, but it fits with the direction and the description in the OS notes. But it then states, after Besselsley, the route to Oxford is unclear. Oxford, not Alchester. So if that means that they think the route didn't go north to Alchester and in fact it curved off towards Oxford over the Thames by a ford somehow and picked up the already established north-south route of 160, well, that now gives us two options. Number one, Frilford up to Alchester as originally thought, north-northeast. Number two, north-east-east, a sharp right-hand turn from Besselsley across Boars Hill down into Oxford to pick up 160. But then we have a third issue to deal with. Have a look at this. This is Rock's map from 1760. It shows no road between Frilford and Besselsley. That's interesting because if there was a Roman road there, you'd fully expect a route to still be used. Instead, it shows a direct route northeast towards Oxford. So now we've got three different routes on this northern section of the Roman road. Well, that's a bit frustrating because this video wasn't even supposed to be about a mystery on the northern side of this Roman road. I thought that would be cut and dry. We've headed a lot further south now to the original question mark of this video, which is why did this Roman road stop at Wantage? Because that's pretty much where all the known route goes. Now, I'm probably about 3 miles south of Wantage, and there's a byway just up here I want to show you because it's quite relevant to the next stage in this video. Rather frustratingly, this byway says closed, and if you look at the sign it says resurfacing work started January 2022. Well, it's August now, and it says that would last about 4 months. Of course, it's been 8 months, so gonna be a bit sneaky and nip up here because there is something I want to show you. What's your thoughts? Where do you think that route went north of Wantage? The main point of the video was going to be from Wantage south, because the road just stops, the known Roman road stops, and there's a few suggestions online of where it went. So I thought I'd take a look myself on the ground, and the first thing I've noticed is this byway sort of cut into the hillside. If you look on the imagery, the satellite imagery that's available, not the LiDAR necessarily, but the satellite imagery, well, this byway looks like it carries on going straight across where it ends into a field. There's a definite clear marking in the landscape, and I'm wondering to myself if this was a chosen direction, because what we need to do, we need to head south at some point to pick up the Roman road that went between Tadley, Cleaver and up towards Cirencester. A very important route. There's no way in my mind that this would have stopped at Wantage and not gone further south. So if we do take this Lambourne route and head southwest, well then we've got this wonderfully Roman looking like road. This is the view back towards Wantage, and this is a view south towards Lambourne. So let's head to Lambourne and carry on and see how far we can get along this possible Roman road route. So you find me just to the south of Lambourne, southeast. I think around about here is the site of an old railway, Lambourne Light Railway, because just the other side of that substation is the old Lambourne railway station. There's Station Road still there today. That's a story for another day. We're continuing our journey south of Lambourne for good reason, but I'll come to that shortly. But ahead of me right now, in this field, as I stand next to this gatepost here, is an old medieval village, and straight away it's got some classic hallmarks. So the medieval abandoned village of Bockhampton, and you can tell if you look just ahead of me, you can see how they cut the natural slope of the field and flattened out this whole area. But it was in the Domesday Book 1086, and it was mentioned throughout time thereafter, but abandoned I think late 1700s. It has no relevance whatsoever to today's video, but I thought it would be beautiful to slot in. Right, let's continue our journey south, because there's a couple of really interesting things which lead me to believe this was the route for the lost Roman road, Route 164. So in searching for the remainder of this part of the Roman road, the southern part from Wantage south, well, life gets a bit tricky because the LiDAR, the tree and vegetation penetrating radar, well, the coverage here is next to non-existent. So you're back to the trusty satellite images. Now, if you use Google, well, you come up with a couple of answers, but perhaps when you flick over to Bing Maps, you come up with this. Now, this is almost directly southeast of Lambourne, and to my mind looks like a good example of Roman road using satellite image as you will ever find. And that certainly helps us pick up the rest of the route, or at least make some guesses as to roughly where it would have gone, because it does line up with a couple of old byways really well. Let's go and take a look at those. So I've just left the Lambourne Valley in the background. You can still see the houses there where the railway would have joined up with the main network down at Newbury. And I'm just about to join up with Chute Lane, which looks like an old byway. And then that then in itself goes on to Stony Lane. The reason why I want to do that is because they line up perfectly with the junction that I've just showed you on the overlay from Bing Maps. Certainly gives us a good impression that that would have been a route. And the fact that it stops on that Roman road, a lot adds up there. Heck of a lot. So, is there any evidence from Chute Lane and Stony Lane to suggest that they were the routes that the Romans used themselves? Such a warm day. 27 degrees, 28 degrees. I was hoping for a bit of respite from the sun, but nothing yet. Does this look like an old Roman road? Well, it doesn't not look like a Roman road. It's got a bank and a ditch on this side, the edge side. What is this? It's like an old gate post, perhaps. It's a wonderful little thing. So, just bumped into this really rather helpful chap who is a botanist, and he said, he pointed out this. Apparently it's called a wayfarers, and the name itself sort of gives you a clue that it's certainly native of this country, and it often indicates an ancient route, or very old route at least. It's quite beautiful, and it does add up. So perhaps we are on the right track, even if we're not quite on the Roman road. That certainly gives us an indication that the pathway we're on is very old. And we're just about to turn slightly to our south a bit more from the current south-south-east. And he said there's quite a few of those wayfarer sort of trees or bush systems on this route that he's seen so far. We're going in opposite directions. He was right, there was quite a few of those down this trackway. I guess a good indication of those is by the red berries on them. Right, a bit of respite and a bit of shade coming up. Lovely. So behind me was Chute Lane, ahead of me now is Stony Lane, heading a little bit further south, but nevertheless still lines up very well with the junction we found on the maps. There's a couple of pathways that crisscross here, and I'm stopping right now because I'm having a bit of respite from the sun. So I hope you've enjoyed today's little wander. Did this Roman road stop at Wantage? Did it carry on further south? Either way, for it to carry on further south and take the route that we've surmised today, well, if it did, then it means in my head that Wantage needed to be a half significant place, otherwise it wouldn't have taken that route, just bearing away from Route 160. So I've been Paul, and this has been Route 164 on the Roman road network in this country. If you like this video, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you this time next week.